What's going on, everybody? This is your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells coming at you with another video today. Y'all make sure y'all lock in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and become a part of the SWAC Talk family by becoming a member. 99 cents gets you a membership to the YouTube channel. We have special perks coming at you. We're going to be dropping special members only videos and shorts. I'm going to have rants and reactions to different things that I want to put there. So if you want to get everything, man, become a member of the Swag Talk crew for 99 cents and get down with the get down, man. And so we're going to still be bringing y'all a lot of stuff, swag smoke and everything like that, and all our normal videos. But we also bring y'all that membership tier. So get down with that. Check out the Facebook and Instagram, both Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. And now let's get on with the show, man. Let's do it.
Yo, SWAC Talk. Light on the mic, it's a play. See Wells the guy taking us state to state. Catch us Wednesday, Sunday, stats on the buffet. From Grand Iron to the court, we got the say. Football spirals, hoop dreams in the chat. Chopping it up, deep dives on every stat. Texas to Florida, repping border to border. Arkansas to Bama, the vibe getting warmer. SWAC Talk, keep the knowledge on deck. See Wells spinning wisdom, gotta show respect. Facts flying higher than a wide receiver's check. From football to hoops, what y'all expect? Guests roll through, dropping stories untold. Legends from the SWAC, spitting straight gold. Locker room vibe, secrets unfold. CW heavy like a championship hold. The South's got a rhythm, a culture to match. Each stat, each fact, another door latch. SWAC Talk connects like a perfect pass catch. From Alabama skies to Florida's grass patch. SWAC Talk, keep the energy alive. Wednesday to Sunday, where the legends thrive. Facts and stats sharper than a coach's knife. Ballin' on the mic, that's how we survive.
All right, everybody, what is going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk. Of course, this is the show we cover the swag inside and out, and I am your tour guide around the swag. C Wells coming at you. And today, man, we're gonna just take a look at some numbers. They're not pretty, but these are the swag out of conference records since the 2021 season, which is the year that the swag expanded to 12 teams. So basically, since the current iteration of the swag began. And this is inspired by a tweet from the Yard HBCU Sports at the Yard HBCU on Twitter. I'm gonna link the tweet itself in the description below so y'all can check it out and get it. If you haven't followed that account, go ahead and give them a follow because this is pretty thorough. And basically, the tweet goes as follows: it says, every preseason, the conversation about HBCU football out of conference comes up, and every preseason, SWAC fans don't like it when I bring up facts. So here are a few facts. And don't worry, SWAC fans, I'm posting all FCS HBCU out of conference records over the past 4 seasons very soon. So let's go ahead and dive into this, man. Like I said, it ain't pretty, but it's necessary. It's got to improve. We talk about that all the time, but these are the numbers ahead of us. We're going to start off with the overall out of conference record since 2021 for the SWAC, and that number is 62-95. That's that's just very ugly. That's 33 games below 500. My mouth is all sucky, but that's just a horrible number right there. So let's dive into this deeper. We're gonna do a deeper dive, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna follow the numbers on the chart, but we're also gonna go deeper team by team, and just kind of dive in knee deep. So first, we're gonna come back to the individual team records because I'm gonna go team by team, year by year on that. The SWAC is 0-47 against the FBS, 0-11 against the American Conference, 0-6 against the ACC, 0-12, 0-2 against the Big Ten, 0-2 against the Big 12, 0-1 against the Big Ten, 0-4 against CUSA, 0-2 against the MAC, 0-1 against the Pac-10, 0-9 against the SEC, and 0-11 against the Sun Belt. Now, obviously, none of those numbers are good, and there's no way that you can spin any of this. The SWAC hasn't had a win over FBS opponent, a D1A opponent, whatever you want to say, since Grambling beat Oregon State in 1985, 23-6. So the ones that really kind of irk me the most is 0-11 against the Sun Belt, 0-4 against CUSA, and to a degree, 0-11 against the American. Some of those teams are like UAB and Houston. Teams everybody play a lot. But you play in all those games. You want to hopefully still win at some point. I mean, every other league has done it, and not being able to do it against teams from like the Sun Belt and whatnot is always going to be a thorn in your side. But that's the number. Maybe one day we'll get one. We keep thinking we're gonna get one, and then we just don't. But that's where we are. Against FCS opponents, the SWAC is 27-43, again below 500. SWAC is 10-7 against the MEAC in the past 4 years. 4-4 against SWAC opponents in non-conference games. 3-4 against Tennessee State from the OVC. And 0-1 against Hampton from the CAA. Haven't played A&T since this time period. Conference wise, 0-1 against the ASUN, 1-0 against the Big South, 0-2 against the Missouri Valley, 0-2 against the SoCon, 6-4, or 9-14 against the Southland, 0-7 against the SoCon, and wait, the SoCon is on that twice. One is something's not. I don't know which one it is, but and then this chart is kind of thrown off because it has Southland and SoCon twice. But anyway, the record obviously includes SWAC games against SWAC opponents in non-conference matchups. 27-43 is the overall mark. Against lower division teams, the SWAC is 35-5. 21-3 against the SIAC, 2-2 against the Gulf South. It says 2-0 against Division Two Independence and 10-0 against the NAIA. I'm going to break that down a little bit deeper because some of these teams aren't NAIA or D2, so we're going to kind of go a little bit deeper into that one. And against HBCUs, the SWAC is 38-19. So again, nothing's pretty there. All these numbers are not pretty. We'll start off with the Bulldogs, Alabama A&M. They're 6-6 in their non-conference games since 2021. They went 2-0 in 2021, beating South Carolina State and Tuskegee. They went 0-3 in 2022, losing to UAB, Troy, and Austin Peay. 23, they went 2-1, beating Lane and Tuskegee and losing to Vandy. And in 24, they went 2-2, beating Kentucky State and Georgetown, Kentucky, and losing to Auburn and Austin Peay. That gives the Bulldogs a record since 2021 of 0-4 against the FBS, 1-1 against the FCS, and 4-0 against D2 teams, and 1-0 against NAIA teams. Bama State 8-5 in that time period, 2-1 in 2021 against their out of conference opponents. Wins over Miles and Tuskegee, lost to Auburn. 2022, 2-1 again, beating Howard in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, and then Miles and losing to UCLA. 2023, 2-1 again, beating Southern and Tuskegee, losing to Miles. And 2024, going 2-2, beating Miles and Tuskegee and losing to North Carolina Central in the Orange Blossom Classic and Samford. That gives the Hornets a mark of 0-2 against the FBS, 2-2 against the FCS, 6-1 against D2 opponents. So as you can see, the majority of their non-conference opponents have been D2 opponents. With 7 of those games, 7 of those 13 games against D2 opponents, which I always tell all the time, you're gonna play Tuskegee, you gotta play them. Basically, that's a rivalry that been long standing. I wouldn't want to see it go away. And Miles has been something recent in Labor Day Classic type of thing. So they're gonna have those D2 games there, and they've done pretty well in those. And they've had 4 FCS matchups in this time period, and they split them. So you can't really go too solid with that. Next up is Alcorn, 4-9 since 2021. They were 1-2 in 2021 with a win over Northwestern State, losses to North Carolina Central in the Mid-X Challenge, excuse me, and South Alabama. 2022, 1-2 again, beating McNeese, losing to Stephen F. Austin and Tulane. 23, also 1-2, beating McNeese, losing to Southern Miss and Stephen F. Austin, and then in 2024 they went 1-3, beating Edward Waters, losing to UAB, Vandy, and McNeese. So that gives the Braves a mark of 0-5 against the FBS, 3-4 against the FCS, and 1-0 against D2, against a D2 opponent. So as you can see, they had some of the best success against non-conference FCS opponents, winning three of those games. Winning three out of their seven FCS opponents. So that's not bad. It's not great either, but when you look at a lot of other teams' records against the FCS, being one game under 500 is about as good as it gets for some of us. Next up is Bethune-Cookman. They were 1-12 in out of conference games. It's been a rough time for the Wildcats. 0-3 in 2021, losing to UTEP, UCF, and South Carolina State. 2022, losing to Miami, South Carolina State, and Tennessee State. 1-2 in 23, beating Savannah State, losing to Memphis and Miami. And then last season, going 0-4, losing to USF, Mercer, Western Michigan, and Clark Atlanta. Um, there's every year but one. Every year but 2022, Bethune-Cookman has played two FBS opponents, so that pretty much is going to tank your record right there. So they're 0-7 against the FBS in this time period, 0-4 against FCS opponents, including losing to South Carolina State two times, going 1-1 against D2 opponents with that upset loss to Clark Atlanta last season. So not a pretty mark by any stretch of the imagination. Um, and the last time they won an FCS game out of conference was in 2029. They beat Jackson State and Valley in that season. So it's been a minute since they won an FCS non-conference game. Next up are the Rattlers of FAMU. They are 9-6, one of the better marks on this list. They went 2-2 in 2021, beating Fort Valley State and South Carolina State, losing to USF and Southeastern Louisiana in the playoffs. 2022, they went 2-1, beating Albany State and South Carolina State, and losing to North Carolina. 2023, they went 3-1, beating West Florida, Lincoln, and Howard in the Celebration Bowl, and losing to USF. And then 2024, they beat Norfolk State in the Mid-X Challenge and South Carolina State, losing to Miami and Troy. So that gives the Rattlers a mark of 0-5 against the FBS, 5-1 against the FCS, with their only loss coming in the playoffs in 2021, and then 3-0 against D2 opponents, and 1-0 against an independent team. Lincoln is neither NCAA or NAIA, so they're independent in that aspect. So FAMU went 1-0 against them. So that 9-6 mark is tied for tops in the conference, in the non-conference. And as you can see, the two teams who have that mark have been pretty much in this time period the best two teams in the conference in this time period. So it's not much of a surprise that those teams have done fairly well. And five FBS matchups for FAMU is actually one of the lower marks on the list. So there's not a lot of teams that don't play as many that played more FCS teams than the Rattlers did. Next up is Grambling, and they are 6-7. The chart says 6-6, but they have a loss to Jackson State that, for whatever reason, didn't get counted as a non-conference game, but it was. In 2021, the Tigers went 1-2, beating Tennessee State, losing to Southern Miss and Houston. 2022, they went 1-2 again, beating Northwestern State, losing to Arkansas State and Jackson State in that non-conference game. 2023, they beat Florida Memorial. They lost to Hampton and LSU. And then in 2024, they went 3-1, beating Tuskegee, East Texas A&M, and Jackson State, and losing to UL Lafayette. So that gives the Tigers a 0-5 mark against the FBS, 4-2 against the FCS, 1-0 against D2, and 1-0 against NAIA. So pretty solid, honestly. Minus those FBS games, you're looking at a 6-2. I mean, you're looking at a 6-2 mark. So that's not bad at all. I mean, your only um your only real losses to to um to FCS opponents were to a Jackson State team that basically ran through the conference in 2022, and then a Hampton team that kind of was an upset to a degree. But it was a game that Grambling fell behind and made a comeback but couldn't get over the hump. So they did fairly well in the non-conference in the FCS, and obviously that 0-5 mark in FBS weights that number down. But even and even when you look at what Grambling's overall records were in this time period, that's still a good mark out of conference. So I think they did a pretty good job of scheduling games and winning some of those games. So you can't take anything from them on that. Next up is Jackson State. They're 9-6. 2-2 in the FB in 2-2 overall, 2-2 non-conference overall record in 2021, beating Tennessee State and Delta State, losing to ULM and South Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl. 2022 they went 3-1, beating Tennessee State, Grambling, and Campbell in the non-conference and losing to North Carolina Central in the Celebration Bowl. 2-1 in 2023. They beat South Carolina State in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, and then they beat Southern, and they lost to Texas State. And then 2024 they beat Lane and Southern, losing to ULM and Grambling to go 2-2 in that non-conference mark, giving them a 0-3 FBS mark, 7-3 against the FCS, and 2-0 against D2 opponents. So I mean, this is a team that won 3 out of 4 SWAC championships in this time span. So, obviously they scheduled pretty well and they won those games. I mean, even the non-conference losses they had to FBS games minus the Texas State game were games that they had chances in to win. So, I think they've had a really good non-conference slate. They carried their weight, and they did as a great team should have done. It very easily could have been um, a better mark. I mean, you can almost explain away every loss that they have, and so that's the mark of a good team. Valley 1-12, not really a surprise there. This is a team that didn't win a lot of games in this time period, so obviously they're not going to win a lot of non-conference games, and they schedule pretty aggressively in the non-conference, going 1-2 in 2021, beating North Carolina Central, losing to Stephen F. Austin and Murray State. 2022, they went 0-3, losing to Tarleton State, Austin P, and Delta State. Uh, 2023 was a really bad year for them non-conference wise. They lost 2 D2 games that year, losing to Central State and Delta State and North Carolina Central. And then last season, they went 0-4, losing to Tennessee State, Lamar, Murray State, and Nicholls State. Giving the Delta Devils a mark of 1-9 against the FCS and 0-3 against D2 opponents. They have not played an FBS game. I know at one point they couldn't play them because they weren't counters, because they didn't have enough scholarships, but I think that's alleviated as far as I know. But they haven't played FBS opponents, so they don't have that on their record. So they can say that they haven't held they haven't caused the SWAC any FBS trouble. So they can look at that as a bright note. Prairie View 4-9. They went 1-2 in 2021, beating Houston Christian, losing to Incarnate Word and Texas A&M. 22, they went 1-2, beating Lamar, losing to Abilene Christian and Incarnate Word. 23, they went 0-3, losing to Abilene Christian, SMU, and Houston Christian. And then last season, they went 2-2, beating Northwestern State, East Tennessee, East Texas A&M, Texas A&M Commerce, Michigan State, and UIW. So not a bad mark when you really break it down. I mean, they went 4-6 against the FCS, 0-3 against FBS. That 4-6 mark is really good, honestly. I mean, of course you want more wins, but they've scheduled really well out of conference. They play a lot of Southland teams, and they've been very successful when you look at it compared to what the rest of the league has done, especially against that conference. They've scheduled well, being the fact that they're in Texas and there's a lot of Texas teams around them. And so they continue to schedule that way. And other than like Incarnate Word, who has been a playoff regular over that time span, they've done fairly well. Most of these games have been relatively close. I know that Houston Christian loss in 23 was pretty ugly. And of course, like I said, the UIW losses have been kind of bad, but they've been in a lot of these games, and then they've been able to win a few of those games. So that 0-3 mark against the FBS, they played basically three power conference teams. I mean, now SMU is in the ACC. At that point, they were still a G5 team, but they played a Big Ten team and an SEC team. So they played pretty high on that mark. But they've done a good job, and they up until this season they haven't had those Lincolns and VULs on their schedule. So they've had a solid non-conference schedule over that time period, and they've done fairly well. So again, without the FBS mark, they 4-6, and that's really good as far as really good relatively compared to what everything else is. What next up is Southern, and this one is probably the most disappointing one to me, and not only because I'm a Southern fan, but Southern's schedule has been very, very, very disappointing over this time period. They're 5-8, and that 5-8 is very deceiving. But they're 5-8 since 2020, since 2021. In 21, they beat Miles, losing to Troy and McNeese, giving them a 1-2 record. In 2022, they went 2-1, beating Florida Memorial and Virginia Lynchburg, losing to LSU. 2023, they beat Lincoln, and then they lost to Alabama State and Jackson State. 1-3 last season, beating Savannah State, losing to McNeese, Jackson, and Nichols. There's a couple of things that stand out to me for this one. One is the Southern's reliance on playing SWAC opponents out of conference. They have the most. They have the most games of that in this time period, basically, and that's not counting the two that they play in this season. Um, the last 2 years they played at least one SWAC opponent out of conference. This season they playing two. In 2023 they played two. Um, And then other than that is, you have so many low division teams. I mean, all five of their victories come from teams below the FCS level. So they're 0-6. I mean, excuse me, they're 0-2 against FBS opponents. Haven't, like I said, they haven't played hardly any FBS games. So that's been something that they've been able to avoid for the most part. So they're 0-2 against FBS, 0-6 against FCS opponents, 2-0 against NAI opponents, and then 1-0. Let's see, 2-0 against D2 opponents, 1-0 against NAIA opponents, and 2-0 against independent type teams. So that's just not that's just not pretty. And their last FCS win came in the MEAC SWAC Challenge in 2017 against South Carolina State. So they just have not been able to win non-conference games against anybody that's not a Virginia Lynchburg, Lincoln, or anybody like that. So, for a team that went to the SWAC championship 2 out of these 4 years, that's not pretty. It's really not pretty. And that 5-8 record, it looked okay to you really look into it, and it's just not pretty. Take Southern as 4-8 in the non-conference. They're 1-2 in 2021, beating North American and losing to Rice and Baylor. 2022, they went 1-2, beating Lincoln, losing to North Texas and Texas San Antonio. 2023, they beat Lincoln again and lost to Toledo and Rice, going 1-2. And then this past season, they went 1-2, beating Virginia Lynchburg, losing to Rice and Lamar. It's a couple things again that stand out for this one. First off, is they're 4-0 against Lincoln, Virginia Lynchburg, and North American, who doesn't even have a football team anymore. So they are another team that's feasted on those low level teams. Now, I know that they play those teams for homecoming because they can't play D1 teams at their stadium for homecoming. It's like a regulation, so they have to play. If they want to play homecoming games at home, they have to play these kind of teams. So I get that. But other than that, they've played 7 FBS opponents in the past 4 years. Every year except for last season, they played 2 FBS games. So that's going to wreck your non-conference schedule as a whole. When your non-conference schedule is a Virginia Lynchburg or Lincoln type team, and then 2 FBS opponents, that's going to murder your schedule. And like I said, they only had Lamar as an FCS opponent. So they were 0-7 against the FBS, 0-1 against FCS. They didn't play a D2 opponent, and then they went 4-0 against those independent type teams. Their last FCS win, I had to go all the way back to 2003 when they beat Howard. Now I might have missed one in my looking, so if I'm wrong, you can put in the comments. But 2003, um, it's been over 20 years, if that's accurate, that they since they won an FCS game out of conference. So that's not pretty at all. And finally is UAPB. The Golden Lions also 5-8, and they also have a deceiving mark. They're 5-8 in their last four seasons, going 1-2 in 2021, beating Lane, losing to Central Arkansas and Arkansas. 2022 they went 2-1, beating Lane and North American and losing to Oklahoma State. 2023, they went 1-2, beating Miles, losing to Tulsa and Tennessee State in the Southern Heritage Classic. And then last season, they went 1-3, beating Arkansas Baptist, losing to Arkansas, Tennessee State in the Southern Heritage Classic, and Central Arkansas. Again, they're another team that feasted on lower level teams. Now, for a team like Pine Bluff, who has been really down over these last few seasons, I'm gonna, I'll give them a little grace, and I'm gonna give TSU a little grace because they've been, down in that time period. But the Golden Lions were 0-4 against FBS opponents, 0-4 against FCS opponents, and then 3-0 against D2 opponents, and then 1-0 against NAIA opponents, and then 1-0 against independent teams in North American. They don't have a football team anymore, so they don't. They're as independent as it gets. Their last FCS win was in 2019 when they beat Tennessee State in an upset on a season. I think they went 5-6 or 6-5 that year. So they would kind of turn the corner under Coach Cedric Thomas that year. But that's the numbers in a nutshell, man. And like I said, when you go deeper into it, they get even uglier. But there were some teams who had some success. And it's all in how you schedule. If you schedule in multiple FBS games, then you're already putting yourself behind the eight ball. If you scheduling, sub D2 opponents, you kind of putting yourself behind the eight ball too. I mean, because what do you gain so much from beating a Florida Memorial? You beat Florida Memorial 80-6 or 80-0, and then you turn around and get beat by somebody else because you aren't challenging your guys. So, I mean, that we talked about that in the scheduling do's and don'ts video that I put out a couple of days ago. I'm going to also put that video in the description below. So if y'all want to watch that, if you haven't, you can watch it. But that's the numbers, man. They're ugly, but they are what they are. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Seawells, signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.
SWAC smoke on the mic, yeah, we bring the flame. Thursday nights, it's a vibe, y'all gon' know the name.